Take it away, Rob.
Well, thanks, Tammy. I really appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob Weiss. I'm a sexologist and addictionologist. I'm a specialist in sexual and intimacy disorders, in particular those that show up as sex addiction, porn addiction, love addiction, and all of those sort of common names for what I would call intimacy disorders. I do this every week here, and we're going to talk about the time a little bit, maybe, I'm not sure. But I do this every week at 6 o'clock on Monday nights here through sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And I also do this every week on Fridays at intherooms.com. And the reason I do this is I really want anyone who wants information about these issues to have access to it. And in this day and age, there's absolutely no reason why experts like me can't take a little time out of our lives and make sure that you get the answers you need. And Tammy's there to back me up with resources. So if you write us, and if you want to drop us a note, you can either do that through the chat here, or you can write, click on Contact Us at sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And that's where Tammy will refer your questions, get them processed, and I weigh in if I can or if I'm needed. Anyway, so the way this works is you're going to ask questions, we're going to answer them, and we're going to do our very best to support you. I usually bring up some kind of theme or topic, just because it may trigger things for people, or you may be here directly with the questions you already need to have answered, but I'm going to give you a little theme. The thing I want to bring to you is I had an experience this weekend with my family, my own family, and I was going to celebrate an event. And I watched this event unfold. It could be a wedding, could be, some kind of family celebration or a professional celebration. And I watched this event unfold, and I realized what a completely narrow and confused view I have had of my family, because I've relied on them to be giving me the information and about who someone is or what they are. So I guess what I want to say to you is I am really kind of gobsmacked and struck by how influential the stereotypes that we paint our family members into can be. She's the loser, he's the drunk. In fact, I had another experience this weekend, I want to say, where I saw some nieces of mine also in the same place where I was visiting. And this niece of mine, who at 16 was drinking and using, and at 18 was dating a coke dealer who's in prison now. And, we just all thought, well, this is not going to go well. I was looking at her, because I was in the city where she lived, and I went to visit her. And there she is at 24 saying, I think I've been stuck in a lot of bad patterns, and my dad did this, my mom did that, and I realized I got to find my way out. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. People change, and people are not their stereotype. People are not their slot. I can be really difficult. And if you look at me as a person, just so you know, and if you look at me from that lens, I can be really hard to deal with. If you look at me as someone who brings a lot of gifts, but you have to relate to in a particular way, then game on. So, I guess what I want to bring to everybody to hear is it's about your lens and how you want, how broad an opportunity you have to view the people in your life. And sometimes, and I want to go back to this other family member. For years, my family has said this person, they're just not any good. They're just not a good partner, not a good this, not a good that. And I had to go into their world and see what their world was like to realize that just wasn't true. But I do, so, and let me add one thing to that. I've been doing treatment with sex and love addicts for 25 years, and their family members and their partners. And I really can count on this hand the number of people I thought, men and women, who were truly pathologically malicious or broken or sociopaths, and I can count in the hundreds the number of people I've seen who are deeply broken inside and just don't know a better or healthier way to survive than by doing things that end up hurting the people they love the most. So, it's really, so what I want to bring to you is that we are more than the moment that is happening. We are more than the issue that we're dealing with in front of us. We are more than the things that people say about us. And whatever all of that is, even if it all lines up, we can grow and be different people if we want to. And I am here to tell you that that's true, because you wouldn't have liked me very much probably 20 years ago. So anyway, I wouldn't have been doing this 20 years ago because I wouldn't have been interested in helping you. So there you go. Anyway, so with that spiritual moment for me, had a wonderful weekend supporting family. How can I answer some questions and help folks? And by the way, folks, let me just say this to you. Actually, two things. Sorry, Tammy, you know me. I never shut up. Two things. One, I see one question in the question box, which is great, but I know what's going to happen, which is it's going to get to be 6:45, and everyone's going to like, oh my God, what about my question? So if you have a question, stick it in there and, you know, let us answer it now, because it may be later when you feel like, oh, I'm really ready to do this, and we may not have time to answer it. And you'll have to wait till next Monday. So, Tammy, you want to get started?
I do, but I want to tag on to what you said. And I truly agree with that I can get into my myopic or even my binoculars and be looking at someone. And a lot of the times it's what's coloring my world, or somebody can tell me something about somebody else with their identified label on someone. And I take that label, not realizing that the lens that they're looking through would again color that. So, you know, I think reframing and looking at people, you know, it's kind of through the prism of like, well, there's lots of different facets to a person. So anyway, I like that. So
thanks. I'm glad you like that theme, Tammy. I appreciate that.
Okay. So first question. This is from someone who says, what is going on in my brain that I intellectually know a man is really unhealthy for me, but I'm struggling to stop myself from reaching out to him, looking him up online, etc. I made a list of all the reasons he's unavailable, rude, arrogant, entitled, but it does not seem to be doing the trick. Struggling.
Okay, so here's the thing. We have an emotional self and we have an intellectual self. And the problem oftentimes with those of us who have the kinds of issues that bring people here to talk to me, is that our emotional self in certain situations can get out of balance, and we lose our ability to make good intellectual decisions. So we can sit there and say, well, this isn't a good thing for me to do. I know it isn't a good thing for me to do. I really shouldn't be doing it, but every part of us wants to go do it. And then we say, what's wrong with me? I must be crazy. I want to go do this thing I know isn't good for me. So here's the most important thing, okay, about this situation. Don't do it. That's the most important thing, because there are options, there are resources for you to find, and you wouldn't be sitting here asking this question if you wanted to go do whatever it is you want to go do. I'll give you a different way of looking at this. Well, I'll continue my little way of looking at it. One of the things that we do in therapy with people who are having a difficult time focusing too much on the emotional and not enough on the intellectual is we say, well, hey, you know, maybe by yourself, when you get caught up with dating or something, you're going to end up with the wrong person, or you get emotionally overengaged. So how about you run all of your dating ideas and goals by other people? So in other words, if I were your friend, I would say to you, oh, you know, I know he's bad for you, and you know he's bad for you, so I guess you can call him and go see him, but first you and I have to have a conversation about why you're doing that. In other words, rather than you sitting there saying, oh, I shouldn't do it, I want to do it, this isn't good, take the decision out of your own hands and put it into the hands of someone that you trust and care about, who cares about you, who you will do what they say. In other words, they will hold you accountable to not going on this date with this person that you know is bad for you. And then you know what, if you do it anyway, not only do you let yourself down, but you let down that person you made a commitment to. And then you get to work on that and how it feels to you, not just to you, but to that friend that you made a commitment to, that you weren't going to do that anymore. You've now let them down because you went and did it anyway. So it's by making ourselves accountable in areas where we're emotionally vulnerable to other people who are not in those areas with us emotionally vulnerable. In other words, you may hook up with another woman friend who has a terrible dating history, but she'll be able to guide you because she can see your mistakes a mile off. She's not emotionally off when she's looking at your dating. She's just emotionally off when she's dating. So that's when you can help her. And this is the idea of 12-step programs and therapy groups, is that we use each other's strengths when we're feeling vulnerable. I wrote a book about this called Codependent. It is about our leaning into other people as strengths where we're vulnerable, not beating ourselves up for our vulnerability. So instead of saying to yourself, what is wrong with me that I cannot get this man out of my head? And I know, instead of saying that, say, you know what, I think I'm going to call somebody up and have a conversation about how, as my sponsor years ago would have said it, when these moments would happen for him, he would say, I think I'm having a little flare-up of my mental illness. And so you can just say that to yourself, which means I'm having a crazy moment. It's good that I can see it. it's really good that I don't act on it. And it's even better if I can reach out to another person and get support.
And I think when you reach out to somebody and start talking about it, it takes all the energy out of it. You know, if it's up in here in my mind, it's like, you know, but if I'm talking to you and, you know, and you're just kind of laughing at me going like, yeah, there you go again, or whatever, you know, whatever it is, you know, it diffuses the whole situation. And in between, I'm having a conversation with you and I'm attaching to you. So that's a whole lot safer for me.
And I have another thought for you. We have, there's a saying in AA, Tammy may have heard it, called think through the drink. And it means when you're really feeling that drink is going to be so intoxicating, you can't wait to get to the bar, you're not thinking about lying in the gutter or being in somebody's bed you don't know, passed out drunk later that night. When you're anticipating the exciting time with that guy that's brought good for you, you're only thinking about the good part. Take the time to not just journal about, I shouldn't do this, what's wrong with this, but write down how you're going to feel after you meet with him and what's going to happen when he doesn't call you back or he's out with his wife or whatever crazy stuff you know is going on. It's try to give equal time, not just to the excitement that you're going to fantasize might happen, but to what you know is probably going to happen after for you. That might help.
Great advice. Okay, this is from someone who writes, I got to slide it up. I get wet when discussing most things to do with homosexuality, namely also sexual things, or if I think someone else could like men and I'm talking to them, does that mean I actually like men or want to do something sexual with them, or does it mean that I'm aroused in these situations?
So this is a heterosexual woman who gets turned on by stories about gay men? Is that what?
It's an anonymous attendee, so I don't know if it's male or female.
Well, men don't really get wet. I mean, not to go there.
I know, but it's...
So I would say this is probably a woman. You know, let me just say the general thing, because it doesn't, you know, it really isn't that matter that much, this person's sex or gender. Because the question is it okay? Is what turns me on is okay? You know, that's really what I hear being asked. And that may not be your question, but I'm going to answer that question. You know, a lot of times people say, well, you know, I'm really aroused by men. I'm really aroused by women. I'm really aroused by, you know, wearing leather sometimes, or I really like kissing women's feet, or whatever that thing is that just makes that sex, that have that extra sparkle for you. It's not unusual for people to get really ashamed of that, or really embarrassed about that, or really angry about themselves, at themselves about it. And if they're not sex addicts, going and, you know, being a part of any kind of relationship you might choose is really up to you. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong. It might be very satisfying. It's up to you. And then you get to experiment and see what works for you, as long as you're going along with what you want to do sexually and the other person or people are going along with what they want to go along with sexually, and everyone is consensual about and open about their decisions. You know, no one's here to judge, at least not on this side of the table. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
All right, next question. My husband has been in recovery and treatment for sexual addiction for 7 months. He had a past history of sexual anorexia after he would act out. We would go several months without sex. We now have specialized help. Both of us are seeing qualified therapists individually and seeing couples therapists, etc. So despite his own recovery and gradual progress, he still has no desire for sex. He got testosterone checked and there's no issue. Right. Can you please talk about what causes sexual anorexia in recovery? How can a partner who wants sex and intimacy better understand this?
Okay, well, I don't really believe in the term sexual anorexia. I know that that's a popular term that Dr. Carnes coined. I think that people can be sexually avoidant. Like I don't really like creating language when we already have it. So sexually avoidant, intimacy avoidant, these are words that we would use for, and anorexia really has a very specific meaning related to eating disorders. So rather than repeat that, I'm just going to say there are people who are sexually avoidant. They avoid sex. People are intimacy avoidant. They avoid intimacy. And people do that for all kinds of reasons. But listening to you with my sex addiction therapist ears, I wanted to say something. First of all, I think you're way too nice a partner. You seem just really so willing to, I hope that you've moved through some of your rage and anger, because the things you're saying are so loving and so warm and so lovely. And I have to say that 7 to 9 months in, that often makes me wonder, and I'm glad you're in that place, but to everyone else, I want to say it's not unusual to still be in a very, very angry and struggling place at 7 months. It may well be that because her husband has gone to treatment, is working on himself, is showing up, that she is feeling much more loving. I don't know, but these are good things to talk about. Let's talk about sex. First of all, for you, I don't know what he was doing. You say he was sexually avoidant before, but then he's a sex addict. So I don't quite understand that. Are you saying that he just didn't have sex with you? Because it would be very typical for those of us who come to a room like this to be intimacy avoidant. So we crave connection, relationship, but if it isn't new and exciting and we don't have a sense of control over it, we're not interested. So part of sex addiction is not being interested in intimate connection, but being all about newness and recreation and the new body, the exciting affair, the new. It's really sex addiction is a lot about the new. So let me try to explain it this way. I really love this explanation. I don't know if it fits your situation, but hopefully it'll help some of you. As a sex addict myself, and as someone who really understands the issue, I understand, and as a man, I understand what gets me going as an addict. As an addict, I don't even know where it comes from. I mean, I could tell you it was a bad day or an argument I had that morning, but I find myself looking at people's body parts and scanning and looking and cruising and then getting a little more into it and a little more into it. And I don't think about it even being sexual. I just think about it, this is what I'm doing. I'm looking at this person's butt. I'm chatting up this person. That is all. And then I might be aroused, and I don't mean erection, I mean excited about maybe hooking up with that person. Okay, here's the message I want to deliver to you. The desire for sex that comes from looking at a new or strange situation, or porn, for example, is not the same feeling for a man of connection that is involved when we have sex with someone we care about. We can have sex with strangers. We can have porn sex. We can have lots and lots of sex with all kinds of unusual and bizarre sometimes situations. But with someone we love, we will avoid the intimacy for two reasons. One, it can be scary to us and there can be trauma there. And two, and this is the one I wanted to pass on to the group, sex addicts and love addicts too, most often seek sex out of a feeling of excitement. Like, wow, look at the butt on him or her, and I can't wait, and this is going to be like the best sex I've ever had, and we are all primed up for sex. Some of us have been looking, cruising, trying to create the sexual situation for a week or a month before we actually get to it. So when we arrive at the possibility of being sexual with someone, there is a whole lot behind it, a lot of intensity. But when I turn to my spouse of 12 years and they just got out of the shower and they have the body they had, well, now the same body actually that they've had for 12 years, and it doesn't even look like it did 12 years ago, I'm probably not going to arrive at a place of wanting to be sexual with them by saying, ooh, look at the body on her, because I've seen that body for 12 years and men like novelty, so that's not going to be novelty for me. So whether from the perspective of being a man or the perspective of being a sex addict, and especially from the perspective of being a male sex addict, I'm probably not going to ever initiate sex with my partner, my spouse, my beloved from a place of horniness or intensity. I'm going to lie in bed next to you and think, well, I'm not really horny, and I've seen those body parts before, and good night, because that's what a sex addict does. When we decide to come from a place of willingness, not I'm so turned on that I can't wait to get in bed with this person, and sex addicts don't think about this. What if I stroked his hair? What if she massaged my back? What if we got out some oil? What if we rubbed each other's hands? Oh my goodness, now I'm aroused. Oh my goodness, now we're having sex. It's kind of much more organic than, oh my God, I see that person and I got to have sex with somebody and hopefully with them, or much more what a sex addict would think. So two ways of looking at this. Sex addicts are often sexual out of intensity when what they really need and want is intimacy, but intimacy is scary. Sex addicts will often choose to be sexual out of horniness, but they don't realize that there's another way to become aroused and sexual, which has to do with being willing. And when you're willing to love on your partner, to nurture your partner, to be sensual with your partner, and they are with you, then there's going to be arousal and there's going to be sex that might be unexpected, but that's actually going to be a completely different thing. You will blow your man's socks off if he experiences sex through connection rather than sex through disconnection. Yeah.
So this is from the person whose husband committed suicide, and so they've gone through the funeral, and people told the family what a positive influence he was in their lives. So many good and loving comments. So his sex addiction did not affect the whole life, but their children and their adult children are having a difficult time separating the good and the bad. How can they be helped to remember all the good things that their dad did and was?
This is, hold on one second. Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen to look good for you. Okay. The question that's being asked here is a really important one because, and it goes beyond this situation, because this is a more extreme situation where someone found out about their partner's sex addiction after they had died. But more typically, we find out while they're alive, and the question is still the same. How do I deal with our kids? How do I deal with our cousins, our uncles, our nephews? The holidays are coming. I'm really upset with them. What do I do? You know, how do I hold on to some good feelings? So, first of all, let me say for all 34 of you who are here, if you haven't heard this, you heard it from me. Please don't tell your children about what's going on in your relationship regarding sex, especially if they're under 18 or 21. Tell them you're struggling, tell them you're mad at each other, tell them that you're depressed, but don't tell them about mom or dad's sex life. I've worked with too many adults who feel already scarred enough by sex addiction or whatever was going on in their family, and then they found out about mom or dad's sexual issues, the last thing that you as a kid, an adult child, ever want to have in your head. It just doesn't, you know, it's important to validate your children and your especially younger children, but all of your family members' reality. Yes, we're struggling, or yes, in your case, yes, I did, you know, I have all kinds of new feelings about your dad since he's passed, you know, loving ones and other ones, and I'm all over the map, and that would be honest. I don't think you have to act or pretend, but I do think that you need to respect, and as you're asking, the value that others place on this person, regardless of what your experience is. This isn't Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein where we all need to jump on and say, oh, me too. This is just what happened between the two of you. And I think you can, maybe not every day, but most days, hold on to a few things that are good about your relationship, even though there was lying and betrayal and disappointment. And let me tell you whose husband died and you did not know that he was a sex addict, that about 90% of the couples I work with stay together. 90%, maybe 80. And what I'm saying is, even in situations where couples, I think, have the most profound sense of betrayal and violation, partners especially, they recognize often that there is so much more that they share together than betrayal. That they have kids, that they have family, they have jobs, they have community, they have church, they have things that have meaning to them that they have shared. And that shared meaning doesn't go away or become less because there are also some bad things that are happening or have happened. Most couples that I work with who have these issues stay together. And I think it's because they recognize, now let me say this, the couples that don't stay together usually haven't been together long. It's the couples who, you know, they've been together 18 months or 2 years, and somebody who's being cheated on is thinking, shit, this is going to be a lifetime of this. I'm out of here. And I completely understand that. I really do. Especially if you didn't know anything about it and that person married you and didn't tell you that they had the problem. But once you're 15 years in and you've got 2 kids and there's family and church and house and job, it's not as easy to just say, well, I'm moving on. And because there's so much more that you share, both good and bad. So if that's helpful to you or any of you, I hope it was.
Well, and I think none of us are all good or all bad. So, and
I'm all good.
Okay, next question. How, if you could please explain the difference between, oops, it just slid again, the difference between a love addict and a person who loves an addict.
Yes.
I know you
can.
This
is a very good question. I often get the question, can you explain the difference between someone who's codependent and someone who's a love addict? So I think that these terms, because they're popular terms and not really psychological definitions, can often get all mixed up, and I completely understand that. To me, a love addict is someone who objectifies other people. In other words, they don't see them as they really are. They turn them into a fantasy love object, and then they pursue trying to keep that person inside of the tinsel that they've put up all around them. In other words, they do their best to continue to see this person as whatever it is they need that person to be. But they don't really see the person for who they are, because they're not looking for someone else. Love addicts are looking for someone to fill a hole inside of them. So as a love addict, I'm really interested in the closest approximation to someone who looks kind of like someone I would want to be with, and then the rest I can do by myself. I'll throw moonbeams on them. I'll think about them all day long. I'll obsess about them. I'll have lots of sex with them. And before you know it, I will see them as being so much better than they really are. And then they will disappoint me and let me down constantly, because they'll never be the person that I think in my head that they are. So that's a love addict to me, someone who doesn't really see the other person, but will get into a relationship with the barest hint that that person might be the love object that will leave them feeling less alone, less scared, less fearful of abandonment. What was the other option, love addict or?
A person who loves an addict.
Well, people who love addicts are quite noble, I think. I mean, we're lucky to have you around. And, you know, what's to say there's something wrong with you because you love an addict? I just wrote a book about this called Codependent, and I am giving a lot of pushback on the idea that just because you love someone who ends up having an emotional challenge, look, if you love me and I ended up with diabetes, would you say, wow, you know, what's wrong with me that I keep ending up with, you know, I don't think that that's fair to yourself. So maybe you just fell in love with the person you fell in love with and they had some problems. Now, those of us who do get involved over and over again with people, so love addicts pursue objectified relationships with unavailable partners, or they might even be available, but they're not looking for that. They're looking for that person to be what they need them to be. If I love an addict, it may just well be that I really loved a really cool person that I had a really good time with and I had a really great relationship with, and for whatever reason I didn't see, or they really well hid some things that got really bad over time, and like a frog in the boiling water, it just got less and less comfortable, but I didn't know why and they weren't telling me, so it got really crazy over time. That's very different than choosing a partner based on throwing Christmas lights over them. I think many people fall in love with addicts because addicts are not just addicts. You know, we're actually sometimes smart, sometimes interesting, sometimes funny. There's more going on with us than just that. So you're not just falling in love with an addict. In fact, I push back on that. I say that you fall in love with somebody and one of their challenges is they have addiction. I think about it like that.
Okay, we've got a lot of questions, so I'm going to keep running through them. So the next one is, my husband is a porn addict who spiraled into a progressive acting out 4 years ago and had sex with multiple different random women. She became aware of this and tried to help him. Thought we were doing much better than last year. He relapsed with porn and sketchy massage parlors. I separated from him for several months and told him he was responsible for fixing himself. They've got 3 children who are older, and it really seemed as though he was doing things to make the changes that he needed to make. He was back home since the beginning of the year, and I recently found out that he hasn't gone to a counselor for the past 5 or 6 months. He doesn't work any other recovery program, and he doesn't seem to look at me sexually anymore. We haven't had sex in several months. Am I crazy for alarm bells going off like crazy?
Well, let me say this to you. One of the things that and this is directly to your question. One of the things that Tammy and I are working on, and our whole team at Seeking Integrity or Sex and Relationship Healing, is having a place where you can hang out and talk to other people who are dealing with what you're dealing with. So I want you to know that, and Tammy will know better than I when it's starting, because she is creating it, but there's a drop-in group for partners of addicts and partners of sex and love addicts where you guys can just say, you know, I can't believe he did this, and I didn't think that was this, and just talk to each other, and we're going to monitor those two, not record, just monitor so that nobody weird or odd comes, but we're going to give you a space for that. So first I wanted to say to you that you're not alone and that there's lots of room and space that is being created online for you to get support in a variety of places. This is just one of them, and I'm really glad you're here. Rest of the question, Tammy, I'm sorry, I need to be reminded.
So he hasn't gone. So now
Oh, right,
he's been
right.
home, but
Okay.
now he's not going to the therapist. He's not doing
So,
any recovery work, and
so
so
I think, so here's the deal. If he's a sex addict, and it doesn't sound like he's just a porn addict, because you talked about him escalating into behavior. So, and the reason I ask that is there is a whole population of young men who really just look at porn, and some women, and their issues are not as escalated as what you describe in your husband. So he went full bore out there as a sex addict with other people, all fine. These are not people who get well with 6 months of therapy. Those of us who have these issues are going to have a very long, um, committed journey to healing. And it doesn't come from sitting at home watching Netflix. It comes from realizing that I don't want to be this person anymore, that I don't want to lie to my partner anymore, that I want to parent my children with wholeheartedness, and I can't live as a lie anymore, and whatever brings that person to want to create change. I don't want to give therapy advice here because it's not my place to. I think there are other people in this room who might well be able to weigh in and give you their advice, but I will tell you this, that in my mind, and there's no question about this, that early recovery, which means the first 3 years, is all about action. It's not about I'm sorry. It's not about I'm better now. It's not about, I wouldn't listen to any of that crap from a sex addict. I would want 3 years of therapy, 2 or 3 years of 12-step programs, group therapy, ongoing commitments with other people. I want to see him involved, engaged. He has a serious emotional problem. Addiction is, and to all those of you who don't respect or agree with this, I understand, but from my perspective, addiction is a form of mental illness. I mean, it's not that different than any other mental illness. You know, it leaves us becoming dysfunctional, and then it's a brain problem, and then it needs repair, and then it's chronic. When we are under stress, it will reappear, like depression, like anxiety, like any other emotional disorder. So your husband has an emotional disorder that he does not want to take responsibility for. I don't know why. My thoughts would be about how safe a home is this for me, for my kids, and I mean emotionally. What are these children, if you said they're older, I don't know if they're still in the home, but for any of you who have kids around, what are my kids seeing between me and this person who I'm so hurt and angry with or by? But I think I would look at personal safety and your own emotional stability. And I want to say this to you. You said you want to have sex with him, and I'm thinking, I hope you have condoms. Because if your male sex addict partner has had 3 or 4 months of going to some groups and meetings and a little bit of therapy, and now he's doing nothing, I would not be looking to have sex with him without a condom, because I don't know where he's been. And I don't know what he's doing right now, and neither do you. Because if he doesn't have that ongoing commitment to healing, then you don't have any guarantee that he's not doing the things that he was doing before. The only guarantee you have of that is his willingness to be honest. And the only place his willingness to be honest will come from is by going to those therapy groups and going to those meetings. And so if he doesn't have honesty reinforced, then why would he be any different with you than he was 5 years ago? And you have every right, I think, to be very, very alarmed. What you do with that, I encourage you to get a lot of support in making your decision about it. Hey, Tammy, I want to make an announcement. Can I make it? Okay. Did I make that clear enough? Okay, yeah. Guys, this is my on the half hour announcement about who we are and why we do this. I really appreciate it. And a little bit more about how to find stuff that we offer. Myself and Tammy and a couple of other colleagues have been in the treatment field of addictions for many, many years, and we decided that there has to be a better way to deliver services to people who may not get the, excuse me, I'm not praying, I'm making the light better. We believe that there are many, many ways for people to get well. And so we have treatment environments, or we will be very soon. We make referrals to friends all over the country who are good therapists. We make referrals to meetings and 12 steps. So what we're trying to do is create a community and an environment where you guys can get the information you need, the support that you want, and also create kind of a whole kind of avenue of ways to learn about sex, love, and relationship addiction. So we have a podcast called Sex, Love, and Addiction. Sex, Love, and Addiction. I think we have a good 25 of those podcasts up and running now, and they're with experts around human sexuality and addiction from all over the world, people who've become peers and colleagues of mine. And there are also some with recovering people and porn addicts and all kinds of folks. So, you know, podcasts are free. Download some. If you want to learn more about sort of my point of view or the work that I do, I have blogs on Psychology Today. Go look them up. I have probably 6 years of blogging where you can find out anything that I've written about. I think my blog is called Sex and Love in the Digital Age, and boy, have I been writing about that for 6 years. So in any case, and the final thing I'm going to bring to you is sexandrelationshiphealing.com. That is the place that we are working on, where we will have live drop-in groups, where we will have live monitored information sessions and group sessions and lectures. And I want to bring everything that we know about treatment and recovery to you at no cost. That's what I think is the power of what we can deliver on the internet, is a sense of community and healing that, well, not everybody has insurance, so not everyone gets the therapy. Not everybody has the time or the ability to go to a 12-step meeting, at least in the real world, or gather more information about this. We are offering you every opportunity to heal at no cost. So here's the deal. Heal. Take advantage of what we have to offer and ask questions, write to us, be involved, be engaged. We're going to help. That's our goal. And if we could do therapy online, we would. But it's not legal, so we can't. And that's fine. We're giving this away. More questions?
Well, so the podcast, you can find even the Psychology Today blogs. You can go to sexandrelationshiphealing.com and you can find all that. And some of these, some of you do need a professional. You need a therapist. You need an intensive program. Seeking Integrity is going to be opening a 2-week men's program in early 2019. If you write to me, I'll tell you more about that. So if that's a place where that would be a good fit, do write to me. I'll give you information. Next question. My husband was identified as a porn addict approximately 10 years ago. Most of his behaviors have morphed, meaning he still lies, but less over time. He's not ceasing his behaviors completely. He recently failed a polygraph as he was looking at porn. He's relied heavily on progress, not perfection, which is a little statement around the 12-step community. He's never come clean on his own, which is unfortunate for our trust. Over time, he has destroyed any love or hope I had, and at this point, it feels like his marriage is salvageable, but mine is not. Do you see couples make it after this much time and with this much water under the bridge?
Not if they don't want to. You can do whatever you feel is best for you. You do not need my validation or anybody else's, And I guess here's what I would ask. It's sort of a silly question, but I'll make this a little bit more amusing. So, there have been hundreds and thousands, you don't know this, but I'll tell you, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of tests about narcissism and trying to determine if people are narcissistic or they are narcissists. And some of these tests are very elaborate. They're pages and pages and pages, or they're, cost tens of thousands of dollars for some psychologists to administer. And the reality is that it's very easy to find out if someone is narcissistic. You don't need any difficult test at all. And here's how you do it. You turn to the person and you say, "Are you narcissistic?" And they will know, and they will say yes or no. And that is true in like 99% of cases. So we don't need to test people to know if they're narcissistic, because they will tell you that they are. The reason I tell you this, and it's funny, but that's absolutely true, is that I think that if I walked up to you and I said, "Do you want to be in this marriage?" you would know the answer. And so that's what I ask you to do, is ask yourself, given this experience as it is, do I want to stay in this as it is? Because it's not changing. And if you don't want to stay in it as it is, and you spell out to your spouse what would need to change, and he isn't willing to do it and fast, then you move on. And no one has to give you permission for not wanting to be abused anymore. No one has to give you permission to not want to be lied to anymore. No one has to give you permission to not want to look in the eyes of your partner and see the truth. No one can blame you for wanting. Those are healthy things. To want to not be abused, to want to have an open relationship. So you don't need permission. You already know the answer. Whether you want to give this person another chance and tell them exactly what they need to do in order to achieve it, or whether you're done. So don't ask me, because I think you already know, would be my answer to you.
Next question. This is a male who is in late 30s, has a pornography addiction, and has had that from a young age. Knew it was an escalating problem, but kept pushing it out of his mind. Also became alcoholic. I've spent so much time numbing the underlying depression. I am pretty severely emotionally void when it comes to people, particularly my partner, whom this has hurt. With new time in AA, as well as experimenting with different books, webinars, therapy, how long into activity, how long into actively working the problem can I expect to have some emotional growth regeneration?
Well, I will say this as a therapist and not as an addiction person. I think everyone who goes through recovery, meaning you've made a significant change, you've stopped drinking, or you stopped acting out, or should get themselves to a psychiatrist and get an evaluation, because all of us should know, if you don't, that there are issues that underlie all of this. And there, for many of us, they have to do with trauma or abuse or other kinds of, or maybe emotional problems that we didn't recognize before because the porn or the sexual acting out masked those things. Well, now we don't have the porn or the sexual acting out to run to. And so we're lonely and longing and sad all the time. Well, if that lasts for a couple of months, that's probably some form of withdrawal. If it lasts more than a few months, in fact, in our literature as therapists, we're trained that if you're really having profound mood problems that don't alleviate within about 3 months, you probably should go talk to someone. So, and I say the same thing, even if it's, and so, believe me, I understand AA sobriety, I understand the meaning of that, but I don't think anybody gets sober to be miserable. So if you find that you are depressed and anxious and moody and self-hating, that's not going to help you grow. And it just blows my mind how many of us who do really crazy stuff out there sexually with drugs and alcohol, and who kind of inside of us sense the connection between that and the pain that we have inside. When we put all that down, we just say, well, I should be able to handle that. Well, maybe you can't, you know, I don't know. But I certainly suggest getting evaluated, because there's a difference between recovering from the shame of having hurt someone, which should be a mood that slips in and out. Like sometimes things are better, and feeling horrible about yourself like you're the worst person in the world all the time. That's a whole different deal. And you may just be discovering parts of yourself that you didn't know about before. Don't take them as a given. Go investigate and see a professional and learn more.
Yeah, particularly when you mention the underlying depression. So, you know, it sounds like you have a clue that there's something else going on. So this is from somebody who's in her 60s and has been married for 30 plus years. Husband became addicted to porn as a teen. His addiction has surfaced at intervals, including a 5-year hidden life a little while ago, when discovered he was totally consumed by his addiction. He was paying for a bunch of things, discovered solicitation letters to prostitutes, although he claims he never really acted on them. I also discovered, she discovered more.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. He swears he never participated. With each new revelation, he said he's done with it. It repulses him and he never wants to use again.
Yeah, well, that's
just found another huge deception after he was sworn he's been clean. Why bother to lie about it and being repulsed when it obviously arouses him, and she's very, very hurt.
Well, okay. So first of all, he sounds like he is an addict, and addicts do things that are not always logical, not always, they're broken, and they're acting on a faulty belief system. So they're making mistakes, and they're making choices that are based on bad information that is in their own head. So the why question is simply answered by he's really troubled, and he is trying to keep his troubledness at a level that he can tolerate, and it isn't going real well. So, you know, from his perspective, for me, if I were looking at the situation, I would think that there's something's needed, you know, more either going back to therapy or going to some workshop or some intensives, or getting back into 12-step program, or really just doing something, because you know, if what you're doing is bringing you what you want, great. If what you're doing is not bringing what you want, you got to do something else. And he is doing whatever level of work he's doing. It's not enough. He's still doing this all over the place. So look at it this way. His emotional instability is greater than his intellectual ability right now when he comes to these situations. When he's sitting with you and he's in his right mind, to be honest, and not all obsessed about addiction, he is thinking, I really wish, intellectually, I kind of disgusted by that. I really hate that I do that. That's true. And then when he's out on the street choosing prostitutes and going to massage parlors, and he's not really barely even thinking about you, he's so obsessed with what he's going to go do, he's not thinking about you at all. And he's thinking this is going to be a great idea. So both things are true. When he is stable and emotionally clear, he thinks, I wish I wasn't doing that. And he can say that to you. But when he's in the moment, like any addict about to walk into the bar or go into the dealer's house, nothing else matters except getting to it. So what I hear in you, and this is the best way I can say it, your husband is not sober. You live with someone who is not sober. And even if he has been, he keeps moving the pieces around on the board. This is sobriety. Well, this isn't. Well, that was 4 months. This is. He needs to get right with his recovery. And that is on him. Whether you want to be around for the process, whether you want to be around to watch it, whether you want to direct it, that part is up to you. But oftentimes in situations like you describe, unless somebody does something, it's going to stay the way it is.
Absolutely true. Okay. So my sex addict husband continues to lie. He goes to SAA and tells me he knows it's wrong. I can't take the lying. What can be done? How to cope, please?
Well, if you're living with someone that you know is lying to you and you're not in a place for whatever reason to not be living with them, this is going to sound really trite, but it's true. Stop asking him to tell you the truth. Just stop. What's the point? If you know that he's lying and it upsets you, just act as if he is lying, and then you don't have to ask him anything. And then you get to think about, well, what kind of spouse, what kind of marriage or relationship do I want to be in where my basic assumption is I'm walking around that my spouse is lying to me? I mean, those are great things for you to be able to think about. But there's nothing wrong with being full of rage. You say it kind of, and at least maybe it's how I interpret it from Tammy, but you kind of say, like, I wish I could get rid of all this unhappy anger and rage. Well, let me tell you, if someone was sticking a knife in me, I'd be pretty angry and full of rage. And until they pulled the knife out, I probably wouldn't change. So as long as he's lying to you and acting out, you're not going to feel better. The situation is, as it sounds, a little out of control. You don't have any ability to keep yourself safe. And who wouldn't be as upset as you are in those circumstances? So instead of turning on yourself and saying, what's wrong with me and when am I going to be able to feel better about this, I would sort of turn it right side in, which is, how long am I going to put up with living with someone who leaves me feeling so hurt and so abused?
Next question is, I'm very confused by my addiction to sex porn. I've been with my wife for over 11 years and love her very much, yet somehow my addiction has drawn me to things that would replace her. I've had recurring sexual fantasies about real people in our lives. I've gotten into porn that would stimulate the real thing, or simulate the real thing, and simulate intimacy, such as VR, etc. How do I know if this pursuit to replace my wife is driven by my addiction, or is it because I am no longer in love with her and don't want to be with her? This is a great question.
So, first of all, let me try to make a metaphor or create a different, an analogy. I think that's what I want here. If I was drinking to the point of intoxication every night, and you said to me, Rob, you're just not really with it at work. I mean, you're just kind of a mess at work. And I, said, well, I get that, but, I don't know why. And I wasn't able to connect the problem that I was living in with how my life was going. That would be problematic. So hold on a second. I'm going to go back to your question. Oh, here we go. So you seem to have, this is what I'm going to say. You seem to have put together two ideas. I love my wife and my sexual acting out. They have nothing to do with each other. I think that is the most important. Like, you could hate your wife. She could have warts all over and steam farts. And you don't have to go see prostitutes. You don't have to go. Your wife has nothing to do with your decision to act out. That's something you need to get straight. It's like any alcoholic, oh, I drink because my job is miserable. I drink because my mother beat me. I drink because, no, you drink because you like to drink. And you drink because it works for you. And when you're done drinking, when it's done working for you, you'll stop drinking. And it's exactly the same with this. No spouse, no partner, no wife, no husband is responsible for someone else and going out and seeing hookers or looking at porn, or it's our problem. we have something we need to work on. However, as an addict, boy, will I try to put the blame on you because I don't feel good about what I'm doing. So I'll think to myself, well, if she was just thinner, if he were just, younger, or if they just weren't, spending so much time with the kids, then I wouldn't be doing these things. So you have a situation where you as a partner feel, is there anything I can do to make this better? And it's so painful. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, you keep blaming yourself because that makes me feel like do this really, really easy because you're taking on the responsibility rather than me. I think you have a right and an absolute a justification for feeling the way you're feeling, for sure. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I think I conflated two things I wanted to say.
I just put it in answered, so you're gonna have to go to the answer.
That's okay. So, no, it doesn't matter. Let's just move on.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I do want to say something else about that. Sorry. You may love your wife. You may not love your wife. My guess would be you could leave your wife today, go live in the most fabulous bachelor, whatever you wanted, and you would still be sexually acting out. And here's the thing, you will never know if you love your wife. You will never know if you truly love your wife until you are fully present in that relationship. And I have worked with lots of men, I will put my warning finger up here, who have been married to a woman that they loved, and they didn't realize how much they loved her until she was gone. And so I say to you, sir, stop acting out, get your shit together, and start paying attention to your wife and see if you can be the man that she deserves to have, rather than sitting around saying, oh gosh, I don't know if I want her, it's the porn or her, it's the sluts for her. No, it's do you want to be a good husband and show up for her and see who she is with you when she has a loving partner? Because right now she doesn't have that. So why should she be all warm and fuzzy? And why should you feel loving toward her when you're treating her badly? And you want to justify your behavior by making it her fault. Dude, you have some work to do.
Okay, next question. My porn addiction has caused severe damage in my relationship with my girlfriend. I am seeking treatment, but also feel a little suffocated by her efforts to help me. I understand why she is inundating me with what feel like demands, and I'm working on it. Is there a limit to how much of the day should be focused on the shame and depression of my addiction? It feels like it's all life is now.
This is a good thing. So there's a word in the therapy field we have. This is called boundaries, which means that there's nothing wrong with her being angry at you, her expressing her anger at you, her expressing her disappointment. But you also have to live your life and get through the day. And if her anger is so pervasive that you can't feel good about work, you can't feel good about enjoying your family, you can't, if it is all the time, then probably you should, as a couple, go to a professional and say, we need to set some boundaries. I understand that she is angry and she gets to be as angry as she wants and needs to be and has the right to be, but I can't hear it all the time. And so how can I set a boundary, therapist or priest or rabbi or whoever you go see, how can I set a boundary so that I can have some peace of mind to work on my own healing, even though I feel absolutely responsible for her pain? In other words, I'm not sure this is something by going round and round and round that you guys are going to get to on your own. I think it's something you probably should get feedback from. And the thing you're looking for is how can we set healthy boundaries around fighting, around her anger, my guilt. How do we, and by the way some people do this is very simple. They just simply say, you know what? We're not going to talk about this until 8:30 at night. Let's say the kids are bed or we're done with our work, whatever it is. And we'll give it an hour every night or every other night, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. We will put it into a time slot. That doesn't mean, by the way, that your wife can't walk around sulking because she's angry at you, but that she isn't bringing it up every 5 minutes because you have a set time when you will talk about that. Unless you are lying, you are cheating, and you are acting out, in which case you are escalating the problem, even if you think she doesn't know, she does.
What are some examples of past traumas that sex addicts experience when they are younger that might cause them to become a sex addict?
Well, that's a really good question. All kinds of trauma in childhood, especially early childhood, brings up the need for children to make themselves feel better. So if you're hurting me, or you're hurting my mom, or you, my mom, are hurting, and I'm 3 years old, who's going to make me feel better? Because when you're 16, you can probably call up a friend from high school and say, my parents are yelling at each other again, oh my God. But when you're 4, you don't have those resources. The only people you have to make you feel better are those big caregivers, and they're the ones who are in some way causing the hurt. So what children do is they learn to soothe themselves with whatever means they have around. So if they have games or pads, or they're going to go disappear into that. If they're watching a TV, they might disappear into that. I used to read books for 16 hours at a time. So what I'm telling you is that children who have trauma and are not getting supported will try to find a way to disappear into something to make themselves feel better, into a TV, into a screen, and that idea of disappearing into something to make me feel better, and while at the same time allows me to ignore everything around me, that is a process that continues throughout life for people like us. So I learned long ago that when I can't tolerate an emotion, I just look for something that excites me and distracts me and makes me think about something else. And because there was sexual abuse in my family, one of the things that I learned about early was sex. Many of my clients, touched themselves to feel better when they were 3, learned to rub themselves on the floor, do whatever they could do to make themselves feel better. But if you learn that, that emotional being deprived and scared is overwhelming, and the way that you resolve that is through fantasy or maybe touching yourself, sex and fantasy are going to become a means that you learn to survive. And it isn't something you will remember, because it's something you learned inside your body when you were 3 or 4 or 5. So does that trauma have to be specific? I don't think so. I've worked with people who had alcoholic parents, people who had mentally ill parents. I've worked with people who didn't have parents. I don't think it's necessarily, I don't believe it's necessarily about the type of trauma. I do believe it has much more to do with the structure of the family and how they deal with it, ongoing kinds of challenges with emotions and communication and all of that. So anyway, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I think I have. Let me just say this to you and to anyone who's listening. I spent a lot of years in therapy, and I can tell you everything that I can remember that ever happened to me, and maybe some things I don't fully remember, but I think did. None of that would have stopped me from having sex with strangers or betraying a partner or betraying myself. Those things, those lessons I had to learn, regardless of what had happened to me. As an adult, I had to take responsibility for my adult behavior and learn how, as an adult, to not do it and do other things instead. And regardless of my own victimization in childhood, which I could go on endlessly about, because I know a lot about it now, that doesn't give me the right to act out, and that doesn't give me the right to say, well, these horrible things happened to me, so I guess, this is just where I end up. And it doesn't, and past trauma does not give anybody a right to have something to use as an excuse for, well, I acted out, but poor me, I had all this trauma. Those things are both true. Yes, poor you had trauma, and you're now an adult, and you're causing some to yourself and others, and you need to take responsibility for that and stop that and work with that, and then we can take a look at what happened to you. Other questions?
Well, we're out of time, but I want to give a plug. So first of all, John Taylor did a webinar earlier today. So his is on at noon Pacific time. And it's Rockin' Relationships. Today he talked about the connections being too overly connected or not connected enough, being disengaged. So it was really good. It'll be posted up on our website, but I would invite you to join us. Then on Wednesday, we've got Kristen Snowden will be sharing a webinar, and I've already seen some of the information she's going to share with you. She's got a few slides to show, so to speak, but she'll be there. The drop-in groups we're going to start next week, and including, if any of you are Spanish speaking, we'll be starting a group for Spanish speaking people. That'll be a new resource. I probably won't be helping on that one because it will be of no use to me. I can't speak Spanish. But the other thing we're considering, and we don't know what will happen, but we're at least having the discussion of moving this one up an hour. So I don't know if that'll happen, but watch the times.
Tammy and I live in different states, and my state changed time and Tammy's state didn't. So we're now on different times and it's kind of later for her. So I'd like to see us maybe move back to 5:30 California time, which maybe at least a half an hour back, if not all the way back to 5 o'clock. So you know what? We have 36 people here. Maybe each of them can say 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 or 5:30, whatever they want.
Feel free to throw it in the chat.
Yeah, throw it in the chat.
Yeah. If you like, my preference would be 5 because it's Arizona time is, and somebody said either. That's great. Thank you. The later the better. 5 is good. 5 is good. So I'm Eastern time, so either works. 9 Eastern time. Okay. So people, thank you. We'll do our best, and know too that we're also looking at adding more webinars, and also the drop-in groups are finally going to become a reality, I think, next week.
And let me just say this one last thing for those of you who are like, well, that's great, but where do I find all these things? Go to sex
and relationship
healing.com and sign up, and you'll get an email that says, here's this group, here's that group, whenever we're doing them. So somebody quick said, what are drop-in groups? Drop-in groups are what Rob was talking about, where there'll be a place where like all the betrayed partners can go and you'll be able to see each other. It won't be recorded and it won't be a lecture. There'll be a moderator. There'll be the Spanish speaking one that I talked about will be, a drop-in group. The men's sex addict group. Go ahead. There's going to be a format. So it won't be just like a free-for-all talking. No. Everyone will get a chance to share. The monitor will making sure everyone stays with the format, because we really want, we can't do therapy groups, so we have to follow this in a way that you get to support each other. And that's really our goal. Not for us to be the expert like in this situation, but for you to be experts for each other. And I'm really, and so that's starting. Male Addicts is starting next week.
I'm hoping so. I'm working on all of those. And so if you go to sexandrelationshiphealing.com, you've heard it like 18 times tonight, but if you go there, we'll be posting all of those opportunities. But if you do sign up, you'll get the notifications of that as well. So that's the best way to say.
I'm going to run, and Tammy, there's a few chats, people have questions for you, so I'll let you do that.
All right.
And folks, again, I'll be on intherooms.com Friday night, same time. Different station. Talk to you later.
So for those of you asking about where the recordings, sexandrelationshiphealing.com, and if you go to the webinars, it gives you an opportunity to look at previous webinars. It won't be up tonight. I've been up since 4:30 this morning, so not happening. But those will get posted. John Taylor's will be posted hopefully tomorrow, but otherwise by Wednesday or shortly. So Scott adds those, so you'll be able to see them. Lots better if you can attend. We love that, because then you can ask your questions, but there is information. The podcasts are on there, so you can find a link to Stitcher, to iTunes, to Android, all the different formats. Lots of great information. I've listened to almost all of them. I've got a couple more to listen to, and I always learn something. So hopefully that's helpful, but you can also reach me. Some of you have got questions or looking for specific therapy type things. I've got lots of resources, and I'll do my best to help you. So hopefully that answers that, but otherwise email me or show up for the next week's installment. We'll look forward to seeing you then, and thank you all. Really appreciate you taking time.